last one that we're talking about is number 11 Notre Dame at number 17 Duke, 7:30 p.m. on ABC. And the biggest storyline, Dalton, is, man, can Notre Dame recover from that gut punch that Ohio State gave them this past Saturday?
Yeah, it's a hard one. We mentioned it Monday, but the better team lost that football game. Notre Dame really played well for 57 minutes and then just didn't execute and got really outcoached down the stretch. They should have won that game, and they should probably, having won that game, have ended the week number 4 or 5 in the country.
Yeah.
This is a weird one, and I think you've got probably the biggest game maybe in Duke football history. Their defense is playing really well. Riley Leonard's playing clean. Their secondary, Duke's secondary, has been spectacular. Digging into it, actually, I think more than anything on the field, I'm a little worried. Other than they played Clemson week 1 and they won the game, and Clemson actually really made a lot of mistakes for Duke to take over that game. Duke hasn't played a whole lot of competition since then. Their last 2 weeks against UConn and Northwestern, who Northwestern is a disaster, and UConn, they've taken a step back this year. Their passing game. They don't have a quarterback. They can run the ball, but it's not what it was last year at UConn. So, and credit to Duke for dominating those teams. But I think more than anything, I need to see Riley Leonard make some big throws. Right, through 4 games, only 3 big time throws. Now he's got the 5th best overall grade of any quarterback in the country, but it's heavily carried by the fact that he's got an 88 rushing grade, which leads all quarterbacks. 19 forced missed tackles is 3rd most. He's the style of play. Tell me if this sounds right, because the numbers just jumped out at me as similar. Will Levis in 2021 had a year like this.
Yeah.
Where he ran all over everybody. He just, kind of this physical specimen sort of thing. He ran all over everybody. He had a solid passing grade, somewhere in the low 80s, and I think he might have been the best runner in the country that year. But he didn't make enough. There were flash throws, but there weren't enough of them. And I know they talked about supporting cast at Kentucky not being great, and I think at Duke it's the same problem. There's not a ton to work with, but Leonard, I need to see in a game like this that he can elevate the guys around him. I think he's played, in a functional sense, terrific football through 4 games, right? Very, very clean, run the ball when you need to, and just don't make mistakes, right? Because even against Clemson, that's how you beat Clemson right now.
Yeah.
Play defense and don't screw it up and stop the run as best you can, because Klubnik isn't ready to carry them, right? Florida State kind of did the same thing. Klubnik was better. They ran the ball. Florida State's front 7. We've been over all that. But Duke, I'm a little worried about the soft level of competition since that Clemson game, because they really took that. They took that game over late. It was 14-7 for a while, and Clemson just couldn't get out of their own way.
Mm-hmm.
They're physical. I don't know if they're Notre Dame physical. Leonard, I know there's some people for next year's draft really, really high on him. I don't know that I've seen the high end yet that I can put him in that class of guys when we talk about Williams and May and Penix and maybe Sanders and all these other guys. This is the week you need to see it. I think if Duke is going to win this game, Riley Leonard kind of has to finally be Superman. And I'm a little worried with Notre Dame's defense. Look, outside of the last drive where they just blew it, and they got outcoached, and Henderson's 61-yard run last week, Notre Dame's defense was spectacular outside of maybe a half dozen plays last week. They were just terrific. So this is not for Duke. This is about coming off of playing UConn and Northwestern. This is about as high a step up in competition as you could get.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of Riley Leonard, we actually have an interview with Riley, great interview with Riley Leonard that you can check out as well. But yeah, man, this is the big story is for me on the Notre Dame side of things is man, you just suffered a gut-wrenching loss, agonizing loss to Ohio State that we talked about extensively in our review episode you can check out as well. that was really on Notre Dame, man. The final 2 plays of that drive, Notre Dame had 10 defenders on the field. The touchdown, the missing defender was a defensive lineman exactly where Ohio State ran the ball, and Ohio State barely got over the goal line. So you could make the argument Notre Dame would have stopped them. The problem is now, Notre Dame doesn't have too much time to grieve that loss. It's not like you have a bye week or even playing a cupcake opponent. This is a good Duke team right now, and like you mentioned, this might be the biggest game in Duke football history. So Durham, all of Durham right now is locked in. So Notre Dame, after that loss, is going to have to rebound quickly against Duke. Duke, for the first time in program history, is hosting College Game Day this week. So, like you said, this is going to be a massive game for the Blue Devils. Notre Dame better be ready for another fight, man, because it could come this week. So they got to be able to rebound from that Ohio State loss pretty quickly, man. So, that's definitely one thing I'm keeping an eye out. And the other thing I want to keep an eye out is I think Duke, for Notre Dame's advantage, I think Duke might be a little outmatched in the run game on both sides of the ball. I think that could be a big, big problem. You see right there, Audric Estime, you can make the argument he's been the best running back in college football this year, leads the country with 591 rushing yards and a 92.1 grade. Notre Dame, 90.6 run defense grade as well, which is 8th best in the Power 5. Also have 98 run defense stops, which leads the Power 5 this year. Now, the leads Power 5 is a little misleading because Notre Dame has played basically an extra game than anyone else has so far this season because they haven't had a bye week and they played in week 0. But still, you see right there, 8th best run defense grade in the Power 5. So that doesn't really matter as much in terms of how many games he played. Duke, on the other side of the ball, Duke has the 9th worst run defense grade in the Power 5 right now at 64.6. And Audric Estime, I believe, is 6th in the country in forced missed tackle rate at about 42%. Duke has the 3rd worst missed tackle rate in the Power 5. They missed 20% of their run defense tackle attempts so far this season. So Audric Estime could have a huge game. And then also Duke on offense, 12th worst run blocking grade in the Power 5 at 58.2, and they only average 1.5 yards before contact per attempt. And now Graham Barton, who's a left tackle that we also interviewed on the show you can check out, he's a fantastic left tackle, could be a day 1 or day 2 pick in the NFL draft, but the rest of that offensive line has struggled so far this season. Ultimately, Dalton, though, will the Blue Devils come out on top in Durham in what should be maybe the biggest game in program history?
I don't think so. I think they had their big one against Clemson, and I think this more to me really is about Notre Dame. Look, mentally they do have to recover, but they have to remember that a loss at the buzzer to Ohio State does not take them out of the playoff mix.
No.
Look, if they run the table now with a win like this and a win later in the year, possibly if they find a way to beat USC, they're right back in. If they run the table, they'll probably be number 3 or 4 and make the playoff. They have to just refocus, and it's not an easy game on the road against a good team with a good defense to refocus. But I think Freeman has to, at some point, he has to have gone to his team and said, look, that one's on me. Yeah. And just move on and try to run the table. I think this is a good get-right game for Notre Dame. I think they're still one of, they're ranked number 11 right now. I think they're still one of the 10 best teams in the country. I think they just ran into another one of the 10 best teams in the country. And the one thing you just mentioned, Duke's run defense, Notre Dame ran the ball really well against Ohio State. And Ohio State might have the best front 7 in college football. They ran the ball really, really well in that game. And just, they didn't finish drives and they didn't finish the game. And the pressure got to Hartman. But Notre Dame's the better team in this game. Bigger, more physical, more to work with. And I don't think this is the game where we find Riley Leonard elevating the rest of what is probably an above-average team to Notre Dame's level. Notre Dame was the better team in that game, coming in at number 9 over the number 6 team. They're still fantastic. They're very well-rounded. Look, Duke, if they come out with a ton of energy and they execute at a high level, can keep this a close game, but I actually think Notre Dame just being more physical, and we talked about it last week, they don't allow big plays.
Yeah.
Just don't. Their secondary is spectacular. I'm taking Notre Dame 28-13. Duke's defense could keep them in it for a while, But I just think Notre Dame wears them down, and I don't think Riley Leonard, he would have to play the best game he's played as a college football player. I just don't know that this is the game where he's going to do that. I don't see, I know it's not always about being flashy and all that stuff, but if his legs are what's going to carry them, as the only thing on their offense in this game, they need to find somebody else that's explosive. Because even against Clemson, his feet were their best weapon. They really just dinked and dunked and threw the ball 5 yards down the field until Clemson screwed up or time ran out. Otherwise, their biggest play of the game was his scramble down the sideline for a touchdown. So I think Notre Dame knows that. I think they know they're the better team, the more physical team. And as long as they keep Leonard in the pocket and force him, look, I would get up and just press coverage. You got Leonard, who's 13th best in the country at throwing short passes, but Notre Dame's 16th best in the country at covering them. So if I'm Notre Dame, press man, maybe even blitz him, make him throw it over your head. See if he can make those throws. If he makes one or two of them, then you adjust. But I don't know that Duke has the weaponry to get down the field on Notre Dame. And I think Notre Dame, I still think this is a top 8 or 10 team that just blew a game in situational football. They should have beat Ohio State, and I think they're going to go in there and win. I'll take them 28-13.
Yeah, man. And listen, in that Riley Leonard interview, he actually mentioned how his mom is his biggest hater because he asked her to be, because, he says, I was praised too much in my hometown growing up. So I asked her to send me a "you suck" text every single game. Not only will his mom do that in this game, but he might even turn on the preferred walk-on channel, man, because we were both picking Notre Dame in this one, man. So that might give an extra chip on his shoulder to Riley Leonard in this game, who I do think is a really, really good quarterback and one of the best quarterbacks not only in the country but in the draft. I'm taking Notre Dame in a closer one. I'm taking 28-24 Notre Dame. I do think Leonard will make enough plays in this game, but like you mentioned, man, that secondary for Notre Dame is really good. The linebacker unit has been fantastic, and that defensive line is ferocious so far this season, as a really, really good Notre Dame defense that he's facing against. Also, Marcus Freeman, I think, is a terrific defensive mind as well at head coach. And then on the other side of the ball, man, I think this is the Audric Estime game. I think, it's been kind of quiet about Audric Estime so far, even though he's the highest graded running back in the country, even though he has the most rushing yards in the country. There hasn't been that much talk about him, even though he's been that dominant. This is the game, I think, when it's a national audience, is on ABC, I believe. Yeah, it is on ABC. This is the game where I think people go, oh, Audric Estime is a superstar. And this is one of the best running backs in the country, one of the best running backs in this year's draft as well. This is the game for him, because I think it's a vulnerable Duke run defense, and Estime has been fantastic to start the season. I think this is the game where people really start to take notice of him as one of the best running backs in college football. But